Min nästa gäst var stjärnreporter på The New Yorker. Hon bodde på Manhattan tillsammans med sin hustru. Hon var gravid och livet var perfekt. Och när hon åker på reportageresa till Mongoliet, då är hon i femte månaden. Och så får hon ett missfall. Hon är alldeles ensam på hotellrummet. Hela livet går i kras. Hon har ingenting kvar. Det här har Ariel Levy skildrat i en oerhört omtalad roman, och jag har träffat henne.
For the first time I can remember, I cannot locate my competent self. One more missing person. In the last few months, I have lost my son, my spouse, and my house. Every morning, I wake up, and for a few seconds, I'm disoriented, confused as to why I feel grief seeping into my body. And then I remember what has become of my life.
Mm. Welcome.
Thank you.
Ariel. The English title is The Rules Do Not Apply. And it's interesting. I really enjoyed reading your story because, and I really felt like it's also my life. You think you can get it all, and you're not prepared. That nature could just stop everything and make another decision.
Absolutely. I think I always wanted to be a writer. I thought it was the kind of profession that went with a woman who was free to do whatever she chooses. And that's who I wanted to be. And through this series of experiences, I really learned nature is the only entity who is free to do whatever she chooses. And I sort of lost my illusion of control.
And how was that, to lose the illusion of control?
Well, at first, it was awful. I mean, after what happened is when I was 5 months pregnant, I went on a reporting assignment for The New Yorker to Mongolia. And the second night I was there, I went into labor in my hotel room and I gave birth. And for 10 minutes, I was somebody's mother and the baby died before the ambulance came.
And you were all alone?
I was alone, yeah.
Because it's such a strong part. I mean, it's heartbreaking reading this.
It was a transformative experience, you know. It was a transcendent experience. It was the worst because he died, but it was also the best because he was alive. I mean, I really had the experience, briefly, of being a mother. And I had, you know, a switch flip in my heart, and I experienced maternal love just for that short time. So it was an experience I wouldn't trade for anything, even though it was so painful, even though I grieved for a long time. I mean,
maybe you still are.
Well, I think I mean, it's 5 years ago now that happened. So I think at first, grief is something you live in, like a tunnel. And then eventually, grief is something that lives in you. So I'll always have a piece of my heart for that baby, but I don't walk around in a state of agony anymore.
But this is kind of a central point in this, that you couldn't control nature.
Yes.
You were the journalist going out in the world to Mongolia, although you were 5 months pregnant.
Yes.
You didn't even think that it was risky or something?
Well, I asked doctors, and they all said the same thing. They all said it's fine. And even though at the time, of course, I felt horribly guilty. I thought, this is my fault. I lost this baby because I got on a plane out of selfishness and vanity. But eventually, I stopped thinking that because I believe in science, you know? I mean, unlike the people running my country, I actually believe in science. And the science says there's nothing wrong with flying when you're pregnant. I would have lost the baby in New York if I had not left. And I don't think that would have been any better. You know, the sad thing wasn't, oh, I'm in Mongolia. The sad thing was my son died.
But could you really believe in that and keep that belief?
Now, yes. I mean, I've talked, since this book came out, I've spoken to hundreds, maybe thousands of women who lost babies, had stillborns, lost infants, had miscarriages, and they all talked to me about feeling guilty. I mean, I haven't met a single one who said that she didn't feel guilty. So I think that's part of the experience, and I think some of that is the hormonal, the oceanic hormonal letdown of giving birth and not having a living child to distract you from that experience.
But it's also maybe something around you in the society that blame it on you or women. It's not only that we take it on us.
I mean, I think some of that is, it can be so terrifying to admit how little control we have and to have that much uncertainty. And one way of trying to make sense of that and to feel some power is to think, this is my fault. What did I do wrong? What could I have done differently? Because then the world makes sense again and you're back in control. The only problem is it's not true.
So what did it do to you that you really deep inside of you understood that you are not in control of life as you thought you were?
Well, I mean, I think that, you know, at first, I get back from Mongolia. 2 weeks later, my marriage falls apart. So I'm losing a lot fast. And at first, every day I would wake up and I would think, no, like what I was reading, I don't accept this reality. This is not bearable.
This is not me.
It's just not, I can't do this. This is not okay. Like, no to this life. But then I woke up enough days where it was like the same reality until I thought, okay, whether I accept this or not, this is going to be the truth. So how am I going to live the rest of my life? Am I going to spend the rest of my life battling reality, or am I going to surrender? And it seemed like that was my only choice. And I think part of the way I did that was by thinking, okay, what do I have? What do I get to keep? I don't get to keep my baby. I don't get to keep my marriage. I didn't get to keep my house. What do I get to keep? And what I got to keep was being a writer, was this thing that had meant so much to me, had been my dream since I was a little girl, that could not be taken away.
Is there something that you could really tell yourself to do, that you kind of had a choice? I could either go this way or that way. The way you describe is to take control of the things that you can be in control of. Writing, for instance.
You know, I think it occurred to me that I had a choice to be bitter or to be grateful. That I could either think, you know, why me? Why did this happen to me? Or I could think, why not me? Why shouldn't bad things happen to me? Bad things happen to everybody. What can I be grateful for? What do I have that's good? And the answer was a lot. I mean, I have a lot to be grateful for. So I had to focus on that.
You have been looking, and you are, in a sense, doing this in this book too, feminism in different angles.
Yes.
Provocative sometimes for feminists, I think, but it's also healthy to read, because I think we kind of created something that are not really true, and it's hard to deal with that.
Well, I don't think that it's feminism's fault that my generation, or that many of us in general right now, think that we can have everything. I don't think, I think the idea that you are entitled to everything you want in life is not the thinking of a feminist. I think that's the thinking of a 3-year-old, you know? And I don't think feminism told us that. I think that feminism said, as a woman, you're fully human, you're a full human being. But the human condition is that everybody doesn't get everything. So I think we're starting to hear more stories about this from women, because women are starting to have, thanks to feminism, women are starting to have the freedom to learn this, because our world isn't as constrained, as constricted as it was, you know, for my mother or her mother.
It's a big step to do what you did, to write about your life. So, I mean, you go very deep into sorrow, grief, and love and everything. Why did you decide to do that? What was the purpose?
Well, I thought it was an interesting story. I thought it was a dramatic story. And I thought, if I heard this story about someone else, I would want to write it, because I thought, this is a good story. This is a dramatic story. And it involves many of the issues I've been writing about at The New Yorker for 20 years. Like, what does it mean to be a woman and live an unconventional life? And what are the limits of freedom? You know, many things I was interested in. I thought, these are all aspects of this story. It shouldn't be disqualified just because it's mine.
What have you What's your conclusion so far? The limits of freedom, because that's a big question.
I think that there is a kind of freedom in admitting how little control we have. I think there's
Relief,
something...
sort of.
Yes. I think there's something liberating about saying, I think I'm going to try to surrender and just accept that life is going to take me where it goes. I'm not ultimately in control of this.
Were you surprised that you could cope with it?
No.
Because in a stage, no?
No.
That you are so, I mean, this is not true, this is not happening, why me? And then you kind of survive. And you really survive.
People survive so much worse all over the world every day. And so no. I mean, I think if people can survive what they survive all over, then I can survive this, surely. Yeah.
That was something that really kept you going.
Yeah. I mean, the first year I got back from Mongolia, I wasn't writing this book. I was writing articles for The New Yorker. And some of the articles I wrote were one was about this woman, Diana Nyad, who became the first person to swim from Cuba to Florida. And she did this when she was 64 years old. She'd been trying since she was 30. And she had had a tough life. She had been raped by her coach. She had had all sorts of trouble, and she just kept going. So that was inspiring, you know? I mean, I wrote about this other woman, Edith Windsor, who was the plaintiff in the Supreme Court case that made same-sex marriage legal in the United States. I mean, she was inspiring. So I just kept looking for role models and for examples of fortitude.
But there is also a lot of love in this book too, and humor.
Oh, thank you.
Because I think that's maybe a good way to cope with what you are writing about. I mean, the big grief and what happened to you.
Do you know the expression, do you guys say silly goose?
Yeah.
Do you know this? I'm a silly goose. So I didn't stop being a silly goose when I was grieving. I mean, I was still me, and I was still... I knew it was sort of funny how horrible my life was. I was like, this is ridiculous. This is like an opera.
And the love story with Lucy is also a very nice love story, but it's also a sad story that you cannot be control of anybody else's life because Lucy starts to drink.
I mean, we always drank, but we drank like regular people. And then just because she was unlucky, it turns out she's an addict, she's an alcoholic, and that's just bad luck. And then that took over, and it's almost impossible to be intimate, to be close with someone who's basically enslaved by addiction. So that was, you know, heartbreaking.
How is your life today?
It's pretty good.
Yeah?
I mean, I will always be sad that that baby didn't live and that he's not 5 years old, which is what he would be. But it's a good life. I mean, I get to do what I always wanted to do, which was write. And also, another strange thing I couldn't have seen coming, I couldn't have controlled, was that when I went to the hospital, in the emergency room in Mongolia, I had a doctor there from South Africa who we sort of immediately connected, and we started writing after I went back home. It started because he had to send my medical report. We kept writing, and then we fell in love, you know? And so I didn't see that coming. I didn't expect to be, I did not see that coming.
And that's in the book too.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a fantastic book, and congratulations with all the reviews that you've got.
Thank
so
you very
good,
much.
the reviews. I want everybody to read it because I think every woman could see that this is about her. Thank you. Thank you so much.